Welcome. And Crobe, I've already added you to the attendee list. And Rosaria, is that how you pronounce your name, ma'am?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So I'm going to attempt to add you as well. Welcome.
Thank you. How's everybody doing this morning?
Doing very well. What organization are you with, if you're with one?
Indeed.
Indeed. First, for a moment, I was like, oh, that's an. Oh, yes, actually, indeed. So welcome, welcome. This maybe if this is your first TAC meeting, especially welcome. But
Thank you. It's not actually. I've been to several of them.
okay, excellent. Thank you so much for being here. All right, we are. I am trying to do multiple things at once here. Okay, Josh, I typed your name on the attendee list already.
I did not.
No,
Those fine looking sideburns, Bressers. Looking very Elvisy today.
Yeah, I get lazy. Like my haircut lady got carpal tunnel surgery, so I'm still about a month away from a haircut. So I'm gonna look even crazier by the time this is done. And I know I can trim them, but I'm lazy, so it's like, yeah, whatever.
I like the look. You got kind of a stray cats Elvisy kind of thing going on.
I could take stray cats.
Thank you, sir. You were a little bit quicker than I was able. I like my fancy affiliation.
All right, everybody's joining faster than I can type, so I've at least gotten things started. Excellent. Repost the. I'm just gonna. Whoops. I'm just gonna keep reposting the meeting notes URL since people who come afterwards don't see it. Whoops. Can I not copy that? I should be able to copy that. All righty.
So FYI, Jay, your mic is live.
Thanks, Joe.
It looks like we've got 3 of the TAC members here by my count. Not quite a quorum of 7, but enough to probably get started. Ava, as the vice chairperson, would you like to run the agenda?
Happy to facilitate today. I will, I see Bob's regrets are already captured here. I found out Bob would not be running the meeting just about 15 minutes ago, so I had not prepared. But I'm happy to hold space and act as a chair and timekeeper and facilitator.
I think the agenda that Bob left behind is pretty good, and I think just you playing timekeeper on those 4 would be more than adequate.
Happy to. I only see the one item on the agenda, and that's the TAC elections coming up.
Well, we could start there, and I'll copy the other 3 over from his email.
Did Bob leave a longer agenda?
He sent an email to the TAC mailing list.
Ah, okay. All right. I'm looking at the wrong place. Sorry.
There it is. Got it. Okay, I'll copy that in.
In fact, the other three are pretty straightforward and are mostly just updates from us. Well, two of them are at least updates from the staff to you all, and then the other was Ask was reviewing the other open PRs on funding requests. So probably we could start with the simple update stuff, and then move to the TAC election, and then end with discussion on the open PRs.
Sounds good to me. I think that is roughly this order. Elections update, I guess, starting from the staff side, what's going on there? What news can you share? And same for the OpenSSF day, any updates there? I know the open question, who is on the program committee? What's the timeline for that? I think we'd all love to know just sort of what to expect.
Okay. Why don't we start with the program committee one, just because that's the simplest. And I admit I don't have the list of names in front of me, but Jennifer Bly or Cahill, do you have the list of names?
I don't see Cahill, but he did send a list of the names earlier. Shall I share them or?
Yes.
Yeah,
Why don't you just put in the notes?
Yep. Okay. I will do that.
And when does the CFP close? Because I know we put up the announcement about the day. I'm pretty sure we opened the CFP, but I think we have a date for its closing.
Yes, we do. It is Friday, March 17th by the end of the day.
Okay. And like the other OpenSSF days, we'd really like this to just, to be both an overview of, the range of different projects going on. Obviously, we won't be able to cover everything, although I think, skewing towards shorter updates, shorter presentations with explicit like calls to action and ways for people to be involved is kind of the ideal, just in terms of tone and kind of flow. Also, if anyone has thoughts about an outside speaker that they'd like us to bring in to start the day, I think we're open to that as well. Sometimes it's fun to have kind of a voice from beyond, kind of telling us about things that are going on or things to be watching for. So that would be of interest too.
Jennifer, I had a question. Several of the working groups and SIGs I'm a part of submitted for other OpenSSNA events. What are the options to reuse or potentially distill some of that information and submit for OpenSSF Day?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a separate program committee who's going to select. So I think there could be overlap. I don't know. Are there other thoughts there?
I don't think that's a problem, and I don't know that the program committee will be looking at whose talks have been accepted elsewhere and other tracks or other side events or anything like that. So a little repetition wouldn't be bad.
Okay. I will encourage the groups to refine and submit.
Okay. One other thing I wanted to mention is this is happening on the first day of the main OSSNA track. We chose to overlap with it partly because we didn't want people to have to come in on a Friday, which was the only other open day at the very end of what would otherwise be a pretty busy week, and I think we'd get people kind of exhausted. Nor did we want to overlap with the CDCon event, which we think will have quite a bit of overlap from a content point of view. So we are avoiding overlap with the opening keynotes of OSSNA. But then we'll get started about, is it 11 a.m. I think, Jennifer, and then go till 5:30ish. So, and we will have lunch served, so that'll keep people there. Yeah, I know, exciting hot grove. Just to kind of keep people from breaking away after in the middle of the day, wandering too far, for food.
Yeah, and it's a little response to your question about the different tracks. I've been on the papers committee for other events and am on a different track at the OSS Summit as well. The committee members, the program committee members do have the ability to say this should be in a different track, it's a better fit, but they're not looking across tracks to sort of deduplicate. They're only looking at their own track. Jeffrey.
Thank you. Quick question. The OpenSSF tracks running in parallel, will they align with the other tracks of the main conference so that individuals that want to go back and forth are able to, or do you view this as a block? Because there are trade-offs to going in either direction, and I'm just curious. I think that my observation recently was that when you make it kind of an all or nothing thing, you don't get people dropping in to check it out for the first time. So thoughts there?
I'll add to that question. How is the ticketing being done? I know there's been some discussion within LF and Open Source Summit about whether tickets are to each sort of event or tickets are shared between them, which would facilitate moving that. So any of the staff members can comment on that.
This is an add-on to Open Source Summit North America. So you have to be a registered attendee of OSSNA in order to attend this. And there's a $25 extra fee to cover lunch, also to try to mitigate. Often what you have is a lot of people signing up, and then you think you're full. And if it's a free thing, sometimes you get a whole bunch of people not showing who said they show. So, but it's mainly because we have these extra costs for serving food and some other things. And so it'll be integrated with the event. Walking to a different session will be just a matter of changing a room or changing a floor maybe. I don't know that we're holding the program committee to align the breaks and other changes in sessions with what's going on in the rest of the event. It's up to them, I think, to figure that out. My personal take is I'd love to see more speakers, more content, and shorter talks on average. So however they want to accomplish that, though, we'll leave that to the program committee.
And did I see another hand come up and then go down? Okay. Any other questions on OpenSSF Day planning or content? Feel free to add them to next meeting if you don't have them now too. I'm sure we'll all have a couple more questions as the event approaches. Okay, let's move on to elections update then.
We just really combined with the next section on TAC elections there, and I'm wondering if I could put Georg, sorry, on the dais here and ask if he could talk about the work that he and the other election observers have been doing that's captured in this pull request.
Sure, no problem. So yeah, well, I volunteered among others to be on the election committee, and as part of our discussions earlier last week, we realized that there has been a discussion among TAC members to prepare the procedure for last year's election, and that was also what we used, but it has not been documented in a good, concise manner in one of our community repos. So before commencing the entire process, we wanted to at least have this documented and kind of make it available for review to everybody. The text in there is based primarily on an email that Jen, I think, used last year to announce and basically describe the process. So from that perspective, it is nothing new in there, but still to kind of create the most transparency and get everybody on board, we wanted to bring this to the TAC for review and kind approval, so to say, not trigger weeks of discussions really, because I think the timeline is a little tight. We're a little late anyway. So if there are no fundamental issues, but please review, then the idea was to get you guys to approve it, and then ideally open the first phase of the election right after this call, kind of. So still today, we would open up for 2 weeks of self-nomination phase for the TAC candidates, the SEIR candidates, and the voters themselves, obviously. So that's the summary. I didn't really walk you through the document or the PR itself. I hope that's fine. So that's basically the summary and the intention of this work. So thanks for all the kind of the work on short notice in collaboration with the other election official members.
I very much want to thank all the election official members who worked on getting this put together and digging through our old meeting minutes, chatting with TAC members and other folks to put this together. Big kudos. Thank you so much. I have not read this proposal in its current form, so I should go do that. I also notice we're not quorate as a TAC right now, so we'll have to take the vote asynchronously. I'm not sure what Bob's availability is. I definitely, as chair, want his vote as well. But I would like to propose that the TAC members officially vote on this issue on GitHub as quickly as possible to unblock all of you. To the election committee members present, were there any surprises or things that you had to sort of make a decision on in the content of this as you were compiling the notes? Basically, what should TAC members, as we're reviewing it, pay extra attention to?
I might ask that TAC members in particular think about how much time they want these periods to be open for call for nominations in particular. There's always a balance to strike between making sure that we're giving folks enough time to really think about what it would take and what the roles and responsibilities of being a TAC member are. Can they work that into their schedule? Can they really commit to it? But also not keeping this open so long that it becomes sort of a onerous process that's hard because it takes some time. So think about that in particular, and how much time you think is fair and reasonable for each stage. And I think that would be great.
In skimming this myself right now, I do not see a sort of candidacy statement. There's no definition of a platform or where candidates for the TAC would sort of stump or take questions from the constituents of any discussion. Has that been considered?
I have to admit, I don't fully, sorry, I didn't fully get your question.
In other foundations, when someone is running for a position like this, I have generally seen a process, after the elections officials validate the candidates, and then their candidate statements might be posted somewhere. Here's why I'm running, what I think I'm going to do, why this is important, all those sorts of things. And then the community can ask questions of the candidate in a public forum, so that the questions are public, the responses are public. It creates a dialogue between potential TAC members or TAC nominees and the community to help the community all sort of see who they're voting on. Is that something that we want to have? Has that been discussed?
Well, we haven't considered that yet, so.
Okay.
I think it also depends a little bit about on the size of the response. For the LF Silver membership recently, they had so many people applying. I don't think they did that, whereas I just went through this process myself with Finos because there were 7 of us, I think, or 8 of us. So they went through that interview process. So I've seen both sides.
Yeah, no, in the OSI, in OpenStack, and in Kubernetes, those were all, that sort of a discussion was part of the elections process. David, I see your hand.
Yeah, I think at least many organizations, what they simply do is ask for a statement from each nominee, each
Yeah.
nominee, and then you post. And that way you do I mean, interviews and so on. I think that adds a whole new level. I heard that word and went, oh man,
Yeah.
that's a whole lot more. But asking somebody, please explain who you are and what you'd like to do, I think is reasonable enough, and encourages that kind of thoughtful thinking. That's probably good anyway.
Yeah, and I don't see in here, and maybe I just missed it as I'm skimming this PR. I don't even see that mentioned of what is your candidacy statement and where is it posted, or where should it be posted? Is it posted on GitHub? Is it posted on the TAC mailing list, etc.?
So
There
just
is-
chiming in
Go ahead.
with what we did last year, which was to take that on the form and then post it to the list.
Okay.
But we didn't direct participants, to do anything other than that. Which I think that's probably fine and less noisy for GitHub. But we shouldn't discourage people from saying, "Hey, my name is Jory and I'm running for president of the United States. Please vote for me." I would not do that.
Joy, is there something you want to announce?
Right.
I'd vote for you.
LOL.
Yeah, I think we can still make this part of, let's say, the announcement emails once all of the candidates are in, saying, hey, this is like all of the candidates, including the statements, and there's like a 2-week voting period. You can reach out to them and ask questions if you're interested, right? I think this is not, well, we didn't consider to put it into the formal framework that we described here, to make it a mandatory requirement to have an interview forum in place. So it's still possible, I would say, if you're interested and really want to go into depth.
Okay, so I just clicked into the link of the nomination form, the self-nomination form, and I do see a candidate statement, but it is 250 words or less, which is pretty short for, hey, here's what I want to accomplish in the next year in the TAC. So I might ask for a little bit more flexibility there, but Joy, if that's the process we did last year and you want to keep that, I'm totally fine. I think that's fine.
And we can make that a longer thing. I think the issue is just, do try and say what you need to say concisely. But
Sure.
But if you wanted to say, make it a 500 word or something, that's fine.
Okay,
Doesn't matter.
Arnaud.
Yes, I just wanted to say, Jory mentioned, nomination, people need to think about whether they want to do this and what's going to take. And I realized, I don't think we have a very clear definition of what's expected of people. There is some level of definition in the charter that defines the TAC responsibility. So I suggest that we point to that for now, because that's the best we've got. But I wanted to say that in Hyperledger, we actually went beyond that when we realized we were in the exact same situation. And we basically created a page that describes exactly what to expect to become part of the TAC. And we also actually then describe what the chair of the TAC's responsibility were, because it happened, the story is that I was chair, and when my successor took over, we had a chat and I explained all the things I was doing, and she's like, oh man, I wish somebody had told me that before I ran. And it wasn't so bad, but we felt like, hey, it would be a good idea to write that down somewhere. So I think this is something, doesn't have to be done for this time around, but something the TAC should take into account moving forward.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know. I think having a sort of job description of a TAC member, here's what's expected of you, would definitely help in this process. Yeah, maybe that's something that the TAC can work on in between now and when the candidate submissions closes. Who better to define what the job description of the TAC member is than the TAC members, I guess. Okay, any other comments or questions on that, since we don't have quorum to take a vote right now?
So do we want to have an email vote or vote on the express your opinion on the PR?
I would like to have express your opinion on the PR so that we can just see the TAC members, thumbs up, thumbs down before merging it right there.
Okay, and when we get a quorum of TAC members approving the PR, can we consider that closed then and start? Because the schedule does presume acceptance today. I mean, we can push back day for day, but I think we're already feeling a little bit late on this process.
Yeah. So. Yeah, let's go chase TAC members down, and I think we should just move forward as soon as possible. I agree we are a bit behind the ball on it, but I don't want any TAC members to be surprised.
Fair enough. And then there's always things we can look at doing, as even accepting this process and then adding things such as, a questionnaire or kind of having a one-off town hall with the candidates or something like that. I don't know. Some of that might be chaotic. But I think we can approve the basic process and then consider enhancements like that over time.
If the 3 TAC members here right now approve, then we really just need to chase down one more. So I don't think that's going to hold you up too long.
Right. I agree.
Ava, is that a call for vote?
That is a call for a vote to go vote on GitHub, not in the meeting right now.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other comments, questions, thoughts, rotten tomatoes to throw my way on this? Okay, and I'm going to thank again our elections committee members for all the hard work on this. And what's next? Scheduling or rescheduling the working group updates to the TAC.
No, I think we've been remiss in not updating the calendar that is at the top of the TAC meeting notes document for 2023. If we could have one of the support staff go in and put in proposed dates for this at the risk of surprising somebody. I think though, if we scheduled the first one for 2 weeks out. That shouldn't be too onerous. The first 2, I guess, we were doing 2 updates per group each meeting. So maybe if we just ask for volunteers for the 1 and 2 weeks, that way we avoid surprises, and then we can just kind of do a random walk to sign the rest out. Does that make sense?
Works for me.
Are there any working groups missing from that list or projects that we want to hear from?
I think we have one proposal for a new working group coming up, but other than that, I don't think there's been any updates in the past 6 months to the list.
I don't see end users on there.
It's
there it is.
It's
yeah,
cut,
it's sort of split over the pages.
It's on the table, but it's not on the schedule.
You're right. None of them are scheduled yet.
I think the scheduled dates here are left over from last year.
Yes. Okay, so 2 volunteers, 2 working groups. If their working group leads want to volunteer to report next week, 5-10-minute updates on progress of their working group.
Dan, is that a question or a volunteering?
Sorry, no, it's a question, and it's more about the election thing. Actually, it's just so you can take me afterwards.
Andrew, and then Krob. Was that was a thumbs up emoji? I saw it go by pretty quickly. Andrew, was that a thumbs up to?
Yes, just a thumbs up to us giving an end user working group update. That's all.
Oh, awesome! So you're volunteering to be on in 2 weeks.
Either Jonathan or I will be.
Fantastic.
The best working group can go next time as well.
End user? Is that what you said?
Oh, I said the best working group will also go.
That's what I asked. You're confirming end user. Right.
I see. So the SmackDown showdown, March 7th. Be there.
We're gonna have a dance off.
2 shall enter. Maybe 2 shall leave. We'll find out. between the end
Great.
users and the best ones.
I'll bring the popcorn.
Okay, and then on our side, our program management team can walk through and assign some dates for the rest and notify working group leads.
Sounds great. Okay, I will leave the housekeeping of that column in the table to you all to update and schedule the folks.
Thanks.
Thank you both for volunteering to enter the arena. Did I see another hand go up? If not, then Dan, back to you for the elections question.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to clarify the election timeline. When do we expect the call for nominees? When do we expect the actual election to happen?
The schedule is in the PR. The call for
Okay.
nominees would happen. I mean, we could hopefully, if we get 4 sign-offs on that PR today, then either this evening or tomorrow morning we'll send out the first email to get things rolling and stick to the schedule.
Thanks for the clarification.
Then the last item on today's agenda is just review open PRs. There's a lot of them, so there's probably a couple specific ones that we should look at. I know we have the funding requests that was brought up last time for CERT, which I promised to review, and then stuff happened. And I need to apologize. I'm sorry, I didn't finish my review of it yet. I also don't see votes on it at the moment.
I just sent out emails for both the CERT and then also the education plan for the TAC to review, provide feedback, and then vote on if this is worthy to be moved up to the governing board for review. So that's in your email now.
Thank you. Do you want to maybe give a quick update for the TAC and everyone present, maybe folks who weren't here last time, on what this is? Draw their attention to it.
Issue, let me find my window.
131.
Issue 131 is a proposal from the open source security incident response team, SIG, to refine the mobilization plan stream 5. They have taken the original plan, reworked it with a proposal they feel could be achieved with current volunteers, additional volunteers, and hiring of some staff and acquiring some tooling. So if the TAC feels that is still in line with our missions and goals, I would love not only specific feedback on we like this or we don't like that, or did you think about this other thing, but we'd also like the TAC to recommend to the plan to get moved to the governing board for review for funding. And then issue 134 is the same deal with the education SIG, where we have taken stream 1 of the mobilization plan, refined it and built it out with the proposal to have a core of volunteers create a series of new educational content for the foundation around application security and secure best practices that developers and developer adjacent personas would benefit from. And then there's some other goals where we wanted to get better engaged with underserved communities. We have several rewards program proposals to help encourage open source developers to adopt some of these tools and practices. So we would love the TAC to review, provide feedback, and ultimately a recommendation to the governing board to look at and potentially fund. And there are 2 emails from this morning requesting the TAC to vote by, I think I said the 7th. So 2 more weeks. Any questions I could answer about either plan?
Dan, go ahead.
I don't have a question about that, but I have a question about 132. The thing about the mailing list. I was just wondering if that's happening now, because I see that it got approved by the TAC. So is that like something that's happening or what?
That's a great question for Bob and I to work out with Mr. Bellendorf, since the TAC voted 6-1 on it.
Yeah, time for some real talk about the budget. The approved budget for 2023 for OpenSSF that includes the money that we know we have and can spend, does not include extra callouts for these kinds of things. So once the TAC has approved these as suitable uses of funds, whether from core SSF budget or elsewhere, but that these technically are good ideas and really ought to be pursued and are well researched and represent the best set of balance of interests and compromises, all that kind of stuff. Our job is then to go out and find the money to go and support this. Now, that could come from the governing board deciding to make a change to its approved budget, which we tend to try to limit to only doing once a year, kind of at mid-year to course correct. But there may be other opportunities now. I'll just be honest, though, like right now, the current funding climate and others has folks being pretty conservative about that, which also would affect the second approach, which is going around somewhat hat in hand to the members, not just of the governing board, but also to our broader general membership and saying, hey, here's something we think is really worthy. Does anyone want to go in and jointly fund it? There are some other sources potentially of funding as well. This is the kind of thing that potentially Alpha Omega could consider funding. Some of these are, although none of the three so far fit squarely in its kind of mandate, but a future one might. I've also been initiating conversations with folks like the Sovereign Tech Fund in Germany, which has $26 million to spend over the next 2 years to go and invest in open source initiatives, and we've put forward to them, hey, here's some promising ideas coming out, and let's talk further. And they're still thinking and talking and evaluating that. So I don't don't want to promise or even suggest anything happening there yet. But basically, the onus will be on us then to go and figure out where the funding can come from, including potentially from OpenSSF core budget, but that I think is probably less likely than from other streams. So this step, the TAC approving these things, is important as validation. Important when we go out and raise those funds to be able to say this has been reviewed by a wide community. This aligns with where people think things are heading. Obviously, there's proposals also do have expiration dates, so we can't go and fundraise for a year on something and expect it to be the same proposal as before. And sometimes new opportunities emerge too. So this will be an organic process. Some of these things might come back for further discussion if they've been adjusted based on where we think we can get funding or something like that. But I do want to emphasize this is a useful thing for the TAC to be doing, which is sending the signal that they think one or all three of these are valuable. On the mailing list one in particular, since it's small, especially if you put out the side thing of the optionality of the promoting advocacy and recruiting, which I think was an additional 100K or something like that. It's basically down to a setup cost, I think it was of 60 or 50-ish K and then 75K for the first year or something like that. That's small enough that hopefully we can get that funded sooner. But again, many of these companies, many of all of your companies have had some painful cutbacks in the last quarter or two. So I just want us to be a bit realistic about our ability to move in this, and I might need to ask some of you to help me go and sell this to different organizations. So that's, I'll end it there.
So I had 2 questions for you, Brian. Last year, we were told the TAC had the ability to approve underneath a certain line, and like we did that with the SPDX enhancements. Is that not the case? Do we not have that small budget discretion?
There was a budget allocation last year for a couple of different categories of work that stuff like this could fall under. There is one, I still believe, for investments in education materials. So let me come back to that, because that might be something we can tap for the educational SIG.
And then my second question was, I thought that there were specific donations for the mobilization plan. Is that not the case, or is that idea changed?
So there have been pledges, and we'll certainly start by going to those organizations that have made those pledges and say, hey, here's a way to meet some of the pledged amount that you made back in May. Again, those were pledges made in May. They were not signed, must commit documents, but it's a plausible case that those are the first ones to start with and say, hey, you can help fulfill some of your pledges. We did receive one donation last year from Amazon focused on improvements to Scorecard. And so we're working now with the Scorecard leads to figure out what should a funding process for that look like, and we'll come back to the TAC with an update on that and kind of a discussion review. But that was the only donation for future work that we've received that's kind of specifically identified to that.
And then that was our assumption, is that we were refining the plan to see if it met the pledgers' goals. Yeah.
Okay, great. So hopefully it's the kind of thing that'll be easy to go back to those 6 and start those conversations with. I know many of them have been involved in the drafting, such as you and Intel. So let's see where we can get.
And hopefully all this will enable us to turn pledges into donations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In terms of the process, since I think the 132 is the first time that the TAC, at least recently this year, has voted on a funding proposal. Any comments from TAC members or others present on the process of that vote? Since we have a few other things that we now need to vote on, should we use the same process for those? I think it worked. We discussed it here. We had to take some email discussions because didn't have quorum in a call, and is now recorded on the GitHub issue. Thank you, Greg.
I liked the process of presenting the idea to the TAC, getting feedback in the call, and then going to the mailing list for the vote, and also having the issue that people could provide commentary or questions on. I thought that was useful and a kind of a transparent way to talk through it.
I thought so as well.
I agree.
Cool. I think the 131, the CERT mobilization plan review probably needs to bake a bit more, as it were. More folks need to read it, comment on the GitHub issue, myself included. So let's skip that for now. Thanks for the update earlier, and talk about 138, the Slack upgrade request, since that's had a little bit of discussion already. Let's drop a link in chat for folks to make that easy. And open the floor.
Don't we have the ability to have long-term conversations via GitHub discussions? And would that be a better, more appropriate place to have things that need that longevity and that better conversation? I personally hate Slack, and I don't view it as a permanent system of record. And I try to route people towards mailing lists or comments and issues or PRs for to have that things that need that long tail.
I agree with Slack not being a permanent system of record, certainly not for decisions, but have always found in distributed, decentralized, sort of time zone spanning organizations that having both a long form discussion, emails or message boards, and a real-time chat forum is incredibly valuable. It augments the synchronicity of these Zoom meetings with a place for us all to sort of converse and share thoughts over time. I've not seen an organization like this be effective in several decades without something like that, whether it's IRC or Slack or something else. Yeah, I know, I'm that old. I
have a great library of ASCII art if we moved to IRC.
Josh, I see your hand up.
So I want to ask you a question then, Ava. Like, you're for the real-time aspect of it, but what are your thoughts on the archival aspect of it?
that it is very often useful to be able to go back and reference things, read things that happened, both from a community standpoint of like, gosh, there was this really cool conversation I was having with Josh. I think it was about 3 months ago on this topic. Let me refresh my memory. And from the moderation perspective, we are not a large enough community yet. We haven't, as far as I'm aware, had contentious code of conduct style issues, but from a moderation standpoint and bigger communities, that archive is important.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I like to always say that Slack not keeping messages is a feature because it theoretically makes us write things down, but like that's only a theory because we've all seen how well that works.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think the challenge we're going to see with this one is you're going to get people on every side of everything. Can we, like, is Slack an OpenSSF member? Can we get them to give us like free stuff?
The conversations with Slack are very personality driven and very much dependent upon the right person on one side asking the right person on the other side, which is pretty fragile when you think about how often people change organizations. And so I worry that in good faith, it'd be hard for me to base a decisional or critical infrastructure upon, I mean, I guess we do all the time anyways, but like on the back of a relationship that could change without much recourse. Yeah, it's tough to figure out the right thing to do here.
Yeah. We're not that large of a community compared to other ones, but it's also, I agree with Brian's comment, like the Slack giving out free accounts is connection driven, not really procedural here.
I think if we took Krobe's kind of understanding and codified it a little bit more clearly so that when folks logged into Slack, they understood when and how it's appropriate to have conversations there, and when and how it's important to capture things and move them, or take a conversation that feels like it's heating up, or turning into something substantive, and turn it into an issue or turn it into a PR or something like that, is a really solid one. If anybody does know of any export tools that can then say, okay, this great conversation that two people had on Slack, capture that and make it easy to import into an issue, with a single click or something like that, that might also help with that kind of flow.
One of the issues that I've been chatting with folks about for a while, sort of casually, is accessibility and welcomingness of our community. How does a new party interested in contributing find out where to go, where to contribute? Diagrammer Society is a huge effort in that direction. GitHub discussions are not good for that. They're siloed into each repo. And so someone who's heard of the OpenSSF and wants to come contribute, they'd have to figure out which particular repo to go look in for a discussion, as opposed to Slack, where they can just hop on Slack and start chatting with people in the community and find a welcoming voice to help them get oriented and land somewhere. That onboarding experience has been crucial to growing the community as in OpenStack, in Kubernetes, in a lot of other projects. And we don't really do too much there, but we could do more. And Slack or something like it is really key to that onboarding.
Can I feel like there's two conversations happening here. I feel like one side is saying we shouldn't use Slack and another side is saying we should just pay for Slack. I don't think anyone suggests we should not have Slack, right? Just that we're on the free one now, we don't have the old stuff. And I also suspect that a new person showing up isn't going to scroll back. So, I mean, they might, but like generally speaking, I suspect like a couple weeks max is what we're going to look at. So
that's a great point, Josh, that we're sort of having those two different discussions.
And I think, to be clear, I have a suspicion no one's saying we shouldn't have a real-time communication platform. Like what that platform is potentially up for debate, but like free Slack or paid Slack, I think is the issue in question.
Great. Justin.
I was going to say, Josh, you may have stolen many of my points, but I think, one of the key things culturally with an ephemeral communication tool like Slack is making sure that people understand the role of it. And, so as we're having this conversation, it would be good just to make sure that we're letting all of the workstream leads in particular know that if they have decision making that is happening on Slack, that it's kind of their responsibility to make sure it gets memorialized on the repository, and make sure that they are the ones sort of curating the community for their particular work groups. Because the TAC is not everywhere, nor are the staff, and that's a thing that we can sort of push as a cultural expectation. It's just that important decisions make it into GitHub so that people can find them later.
Yeah, I like that. And my concern is, like you said, the TAC isn't everywhere, neither are the staff. We don't really have a moderation team, right? Kubernetes, for example, has a dedicated moderation team for all of their official spaces. I worked with them for a while. It's like 2 orders of magnitude larger community, granted. But imagine a situation where 35 days later, someone in a working group says, hey, I was on vacation for a week. I don't remember this decision ever being made. And the lead failed to archive it or copy it somewhere. There's now no longer a record for anyone to go review how a decision was made. That kind of a lack of transparency, lack of accountability, maybe in one person's side, just a small mistake. Oops, I was busy and forgot. On the other side, suddenly leads to a loss of trust and faith in the working group leader. I've seen that situation arise more times than I can count in other orgs. And even back in the OpenStack days a decade ago, we added an IRC chatbot to every single official room, hundreds of them, simply to archive all of that. So the TAC equivalent, when called upon to step in and mediate a process like that and go, well, okay, who actually messed up here? What should we do? Who's right? Had a reference to go back to. So I don't think we have that problem today, but I've seen it in every community as they grow, and I'd love to set us up for success there. Bless you, David.
Oh, thank you.
Probe.
Brian was first.
A quick comment and a quick proposal. I want to speak up for the value of forgetting. I remember when the Usenet message archives became searchable by Google in the early 2000s, and you could go and find all sorts of silly posts of mine from the early 90s on completely on news groups that I had no business being posting to, but it was on a presumption that messages were somewhat ephemeral. And I think actually, especially for people who are newbies to a community, the idea that these messages aren't going to go down on their permanent record is actually a positive thing. Many of us are old timers who don't have any problem being fools in public, but a lot of other people tend to. So yeah, I think there's actually a welcoming thing about Slack being having that cutoff at 90 days that actually helps.
Doesn't.
Yeah.
But Brian, it actually doesn't. Even in a free version of Slack, the Slack system records all those messages. They're available in the future.
It times them out after 90 days.
They're not accessible to current members or current instance owners, but if you then upgrade later, they become accessible.
That's true. So I think that gets to my second point, which is we can document what it sounds like is the consensus on this call, which is Slack has its place, real-time communications has its place, Slack has its place. Here's how to use Slack to get the most out of it, and here's when you want to move those conversations, those topics to a pull request or a GitHub issue or to craft a document, to get consensus around. This shouldn't be a pretty long policy. I'm thinking like a paragraph or two, and could be the thing that we link to from the welcome banner when you land on Slack to try to make sure that even newbies see it. I'd offer us on the staff side being willing to draft a paragraph or two that captures this to try to take this off of everyone else's busy plates, and then we bring it back here for discussion and approval. But I think if we do that, then I think we'll steer folks in the right direction. So I don't know how folks feel about that, or if somebody else wants to volunteer to write that, feel free.
I'm going to rescind my hand. I was going to volunteer to scribe down how the groups I work with have done this and recorded votes in the past. But if Brian's going to do it, that's great. I I +1 that. Someone else doing the work.
Jonathan, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so I created the issue against the TAC repository just from the conversations that I saw with some of the general population about, should the OSSF be paying for Slack? I think the thing that just needs to be considered here is there's the policies of how you should be using Slack and then how it actually ends up getting used in the real world, and trying to differentiate those two things. And what I'm trying to say here is, like, we should be realistic about, sure, we can put these policies in place, but if Slack has already got this place in the community that's been created, do we want to try to force that, or do we want to let that be as it is, or find another? I don't know. Ava, you did a bunch of digging and pulled a bunch of statistics about Slack's current usage. For anybody who hasn't seen that, do you want to quickly share those stats with the group here? I don't have it up myself.
Sure, I linked it in the GitHub issue. It's, I think, second from the bottom. The short version is on our mailing lists. There are approximately 1,500 accounts active. Most mailing lists, other than Announce, have less than 100 subscribers on each list, and very little activity. The TAC list has less than 700 messages in its entire lifespan. By contrast, Slack is incredibly active. Out of 2,000 total accounts, a little more than the mailing list, we actually have about 2/5, about 700 weekly active members in any given week. About 100,000 messages sent total in the lifetime of that Slack instance, and about 75% of those are in non-public channels, which could be DMs, it could be private channels. So it's a very active place where our community spends time connecting with each other, talking about stuff relevant to this mission. I do think we have to have something like that for real-time communication. As folks in the chat right now and Zoom chat are mentioning, switching costs are high. Unless there were a strong reason to switch, for example, if the Linux Foundation said, hey, we're going to host a thing like Rocket Chat or Element or something, that would be a compelling enough reason I would advocate to make a switch. Otherwise, personally, I like Discord. I think it's terrible for work. And so I don't think there's a benefit to us switching off of Slack. I think it really is a discussion of, do we value the archival nature of Slack's messages over the sort of real-time ephemerality of it, with the recognition that it's never actually ephemeral, right? If ephemerality is a core value that folks want to place in the chat system, then we should provide a stronger guarantee of that ephemerality, and Slack does not do that. TikTok, love it, Brian, moving to TikTok.
Hey, we're gonna have a dance off.
That's true. Oh yeah. I'll break out my DJ decks. So Jonathan, was that enough of the background info you were hoping?
Yeah, that was it. And also, if any of us can back this up too, if you just go into Slack and then you go into it and you say, like, hey, I want to pay for Pro, the estimate that it comes up with is, I think, $22,000 for the year. Is that accurate? I think
based on current numbers of active users, which hovers around 240, 220 people in a given week, right? And it scales up linearly with numbers of users. So if we accidentally start doing something really important and have 10 times the number of users, then we kind of are trapped into paying, a much larger fee without, because switching costs are so high.
And that number of about 200 active users, when I look at the admin panel, I actually see it about 700. So I'm not sure what different views we're getting.
I don't know if it's like per week or per month or 700 in a month versus 200.
700 in a week. I'm happy to share the panel offline with you.
I just wouldn't.
The cost is high. I think we're all saying the same thing. The cost of a paid account is high, and it becomes an unpredictable cost over time if the community grows.
And something we simply didn't budget in at the beginning of this budget cycle either. So
yeah. So I don't think paying for Slack is an easily answered question. If a community values that, we should say so, and then sort that out. David.
I just wanted to raise the possibility. I mean, this seems to be like an artificial dichotomy. Have we asked Slack for some, given the purpose of OpenSSF, that this is sort of an in-kind contribution or at least partial discount? I mean, I understand what the commercial price is, but has anybody actually asked them if they would be willing to discount it for this purpose?
An initial email to the same person who offers this for CNCF went without an answer, so I did not pursue it further. Neither Salesforce nor Slack, not for lack of asking, are members of OpenSSF.
There we go. We are just about at time. I guess folks who have more questions or comments, please take them to the GitHub issues. That is, I think we all agreed, a great place for comments of record. Thank you all. See you same bat time, same bat channel in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Ava. Very well done, as always.
See you around.